we have this really broad range of pathways, and we really encourage the trainees to explore as many of them as possible. When they find one that they really connect with, that's when we might really focus on that particular one again.
G'day, I'm Debra Caldow. Welcome to the Red Giraffe Solutions Expanding Worlds podcast, where we aim to support you as you help your young person with additional needs plan for their future, a future where they're safe, secure, and live a rewarding and fulfilling life. From around the world, I share stories and I share solutions from people making this possible right now. I'm a parent of a young person with additional needs, so I understand the challenges. Many of the people I've interviewed on this podcast have already helped me design a better future for my daughter, and I hope that they might help you as well to imagine what's possible for your young person. This podcast is made possible by Red Giraffe Solutions, which is a project I'm proud to be part of, supporting families to build a better future for their children. We now have available at Red Giraffe Solutions an online course called Independent Cooking Made Easy. This is a new and unique approach we developed when we realised traditional cooking techniques and recipes were never going to enable our daughter to cook without some support or supervision. It's a safe, simple system that uses no more than 5 ingredients, has no weighing, cutting or chopping, and no lifting of heavy dishes. Each of the 16 recipes in the course includes a step-by-step video of our daughter making the meal, plus a visual recipe card. We developed this for our daughter to solve her challenges with cooking, and every recipe in the course she can and does genuinely cook for herself. You can find a link to the course in this episode's show notes. The saying knowledge is power is, I think, particularly relevant to anyone supporting a young person with additional needs. Knowledge isn't just about information, it's a tool that can be used to create practical solutions. So with any guest on the podcast, I like to explore what they're doing in depth, because that gives a wider understanding and it builds knowledge rather than just providing information. So in this week's episode, I'm talking to Marita Bianco from the SAN Project, which is an organisation focused on supporting young people into paid employment. But then over the next 4 episodes after that, I'll also be talking to other people from the SAN Project about different parts of the organisation. This will provide a wider and more in-depth view of how they all work together in unison, supporting the young people they work with. In this first episode, Marita talks about how the SAN Project came about, as well as the ethos behind it, why it isn't a charity, and why the experiential learning approach they use works so effectively. I began by asking Marita how the SAN Project got started.
The SAN Project was set up in 2017, and it started with Kate Davis, who was working in a pre-loved clothes shop in Worthing, and she had originally, maybe I should start actually right from the beginning for her, before 2017, she worked in special needs education, and it's an amazing school in Worthing, Oak Grove College, and even with an amazing college like Oak Grove, it became very apparent that when the students left Oak Grove, for many of them, there was nowhere for them to go, and they just dropped off the radar, and some of them disappeared into their bedrooms and basically just didn't come out again. And the more time you spend in your bedroom, the harder it is to get out. So she was aware that there was this need. So even with great education, there was something missing afterwards. So she left Oak Grove, set up this enterprise-based business, pre-loved kids' clothes, people donate the clothes, she's selling them. And she had trainees seconded to her from Oak Grove who would help her sort the clothes, price the clothes, get them up on Facebook Marketplace or eBay, wherever, dealing with customers, dealing with money, and just building their confidence and giving them work to support them. And that's where she started. I came in at a point where she was thinking, I'm outgrowing this teeny tiny little shop. And I was at a point in my life where I was ready for a change. My kids were a bit older, they didn't need me so much. I've been doing the same job for the last 10 years. And it's one of those happenstance moments where I'm like, I love what you do. And she's like, why don't you come on board? And at the time I was a surveyor. So we started by looking at a property as a place to expand into. And it was a complete dive. It was no way. And as my surveyor head, I was like, Kate, you can't go anywhere near this property. It's desperate. Cut a long story short, we found this cafe on Lyndhurst Road, and it was beautiful. It had already been renovated. It seemed like the perfect environment. And it was what her existing trainees had said they wanted to do. We want to run a cafe. Okay, we'll open a cafe. So we took the lease on here. We had no actual real trainees at that point, and we had no idea how to run a cafe, but we thought we had the will and the desire and the determination to make it work, so we did.
Why do you think they wanted to run a cafe?
I think it's partly because they've seen other people do it, and it is an unthreatening job. It's very systematic in its processes. So making a coffee, you can learn to do it and you can be good at it. And the interaction with customers is really important in terms of building confidence. There was a cafe at Oak Grove College where they had discovered that it wasn't a frightening space and it's something that they could achieve success in. And with the goodwill of Oak Grove College, because at this point we had no funding, we were running on overdrafts and credit cards, Oak Grove actually lent us some students. They were sixth formers who were a little bit unchallenged, and they felt that they would be good candidates for us to train them up in the kitchen and in the cafe. And with their help, in a way, we were able to demonstrate to West Sussex County Council what we were doing and what we were trying to achieve and what the benefits were to our young people. And although it took a year and a half to do this, those two trainees, we were able to demonstrate what we wanted to achieve, and we were successful in getting their support.
So how was the organisation set up? Is it a charity or is it a business?
No, we are a business, and very consciously a business. We never wanted to be set up as a charity. We don't take charitable donations. We always try and pay for everything. And the reason for this is because we feel that getting paid employment for our trainees is really important. We do not want them ever to rely on charitable handouts in order to be independent in the world. And I think if we are, then we don't want that message to go across to them. They are valuable members of society who can work and should work. And for that reason alone, we have always very consciously not been a charity. So every single one of our trainees has an EHCP. So we are provided with funding from the local authorities for each trainee to support their education. We also have all of these sort of micro businesses within the SAM project. So we have the cafe, the retail shop, we have two cafes actually. And whilst they don't make huge amounts of money, it is an additional income. They look after themselves effectively, so that the money that we receive from the council is for the trainees. And the money that we make from those businesses supports the businesses. And it allows us to create these small businesses which can provide work experience opportunities for the trainees. So the ultimate aim for our trainees is to get them ready for work and get them ready for living independently. So we have multiple different pathways. All of them have an enterprise element to them. So it's about learning business whilst at college. We prepare them for work within those arenas. So whether it's the gardening pathway, we make sure that if they are applying for a gardening job, that we are teaching them all of the elements that would be on that job description. We make sure that they have all the skills they need. Same with the multimedia pathway, the music production pathway, obviously all of the cafe pathways. We have quite a broad spectrum of pathways that we offer, and these have been motivated by the wants and desires of our trainees. So they've come to us, they've expressed an interest, and we have then found facilitators to provide that pathway. And that is very evident with the photography pathway, the tech pathway. None of us know anything about tech. So we've had to get a specialist in who can teach them programming and game design and 3D modelling, and now I'm just making up words because this is not my arena. The same with the phone tech. We have a phone repair specialist that comes in once a week, teaches them how to replace screens on phones and iPads, but also how to run that as a business. So when he receives customers, how does he check in a job so that he doesn't mix up the phones or forget which one he's supposed to be doing. So it teaches them not just the technical skills, but actually how could they use this as a business and look at the whole picture, not just the technical stuff.
How many people need to be on that pathway, or is it almost an individualised thing? If someone comes to you and says, I want to do gardening, do you then find someone that can facilitate that?
If somebody comes to us with the sole interest of gardening, to be honest, that's never actually happened. Most people come to us with no real clue what they want to do, because we take students from 16 to 25. And I think knowing what you want to do for the rest of your life is one of the hardest things in the world to work out. We have this really broad range of pathways, and we really encourage the trainees to explore as many of them as possible. And when they find one that they really connect with, that's when we might really focus on that particular one again. Trainees tend to be with us for 3 years, sometimes a bit longer if they come to us if they're younger. Because they're that much younger, it takes a little bit longer to get them ready for the world of work. But we have found on average, we can keep trainees for 3 years, and it takes that amount of time to get them ready and confident to step out into the world of work. And we do that by encouraging them to try as many different things as possible, to find out what really makes them sing, and to build their confidence and their self-esteem. And we get them out into work placements as early as possible. The WEX team, our work experience team, is absolutely fundamental to what we offer our trainees, because going to college is only a part of getting ready for work. If you don't experience going into the workplace, then you're not ready to get into the workplace. So from the very first year, the very first term they're with us, we encourage them to go out onto work visits, which enables them to go into organisations and discover the world of work. All of those different jobs that happen within a business. Most of the time we have no idea what goes on. If you think about a job in a school, we just think about teachers, but actually there are maintenance teams, there are HR teams, there's social media teams, there are the catering teams, there's the cleaning teams. There are so many different jobs in that arena that people just aren't aware that are there. So our first sort of aim is to open up their eyes to the wealth of opportunities that are out there. And then, once they've seen a bit more of the world and the opportunities that are there, and they have started to identify an interest that they may have, we then encourage them to get out into the world of work. And we do work placements. And that is done with a job coach. I suppose the most important point is that in order to be successful, we need to get them out as early as possible, because that's why they're with us. Otherwise, they could be at another college. It is very much about work skills, being ready for paid employment, being able to live independently.
So looking back when you first started, what do you think has been the biggest challenge in getting the organisation to where you are now?
So our initial challenge was proving what we wanted to do, and we did that just through sheer determination, I think, and knowing that there was a huge need for what we were doing. There was no reason for our young people to have to struggle at home because they couldn't face the dynamics of a large college. We knew that we needed to create this environment that would support those individuals and it not be a holding pen. That's what we were always trying to avoid. It couldn't just be something that kind of just kept them busy for the day. It needed to have value, and they needed to flourish in it and be able to leave us and go into paid employment. The biggest obstacle was to get the council on board, to see what we wanted to do and to believe in us, which with the help of loaned students from Oak Grove, we were able to achieve. Another obstacle was that Kate and I had no idea how to run a cafe. Neither of us had ever run a cafe before. So actually, we were learning how to run a cafe alongside our trainees. So we were making mistakes with our trainees in terms of running a cafe, and we would learn together. And it was great because we could all reflect on, that wasn't such a successful dish that we rolled out for our customers that day, and we'd have to try and get better at it together, because for some of the elements we were as good as each other in terms of the learning. But that was fun, actually.
Do you think, though, that both of you having a background in teaching helped you in terms of setting it up in a way that authorities went, this is a place of learning as opposed to just somewhere for people to be?
I think we were able to break down, we were able to make the process of learning the barista skills and the kitchen skills, food safety and hygiene, all of those requirements around a cafe, we were able to make them accessible so they could see how quickly we could get our trainees to work independently, making the coffees and working in the kitchens safely and hygienically, efficiently, and how valuable they could be as an employee. So yes, I think, our background in education was absolutely crucial to making that possible.
What are your thoughts on why there isn't that next step for people that are, say, at the school you were talking about, which sounds like a great school? Why haven't authorities, bureaucracies seen that there's a need for more places like the SAND project?
I think the authorities know that there is a need. There was just nobody doing it. Some of the larger colleges in West Sussex do offer supported courses, and for a lot of young people this is great, but there is also a huge category of young people who find those environments just too hectic. There are thousands of people that go to these colleges. It's noisy. If you're having a moment, it's too big an environment to be able to take your time out and to gather yourself and then step back into it. And it's also not necessarily the qualifications that you're getting. Yes, it is a qualification, but it's not going to allow you to get over some of the hurdles that they individually have that prevents them from getting into the workplace. And what we recognised was that each of our trainees are individuals and they all have their own obstacles to overcome. Whether it's phobias, we've had trainees with phobias of toilets that meant that she couldn't go into a workplace because she was so anxious about using the bathrooms there that she couldn't even cross the threshold of the building. And so once you identify that that is her biggest obstacle, it's not her capabilities in all other areas of her life. If we don't conquer that first, then we can't conquer the rest of it. Because we are small, we're always able to know our trainees on an individual level and what their individual journeys need to be. And I don't think the larger colleges have the capacity for that sort of person-centred learning.
So if I was to ask you about the future then, you'd like to stay smaller rather than...
Absolutely. So as we expand, which we are going to do, our current aim is to open up another provision in the north of the county. For us to just expand here, we could just get bigger and bigger, but there is a capacity of the number of students that we can have there in order to maintain the right atmosphere, the right environment, the right support. What we'd like to do is to create lots of smaller environments that still feel safe and manageable, where trainees know all the members of staff, they actually recognise all the faces of the trainees, and it feels comfortable and familiar and safe. And in that environment, we know that our trainees will thrive.
I want to finish off with a more general question. Do you think then that the answer to our young people not being in their rooms is actually a different way of learning, a different way where it's much more experiential?
Absolutely. I think that's exactly right. I think when people think of college, they are thinking of sitting at a desk, facing the front, listening, writing, having to follow very rigid structures. There isn't a single pathway in our space that operates under those parameters. There is no standing at the front of the class and just talking at our young trainees. We get them doing. You're going to learn kinesthetically, you've got to be doing stuff. We'll never sit down and do numeracy for the sake of numeracy. It's working in the kitchen and looking at recipes and how do we scale up recipes. It's working in the cafe and dealing with money. It's built in and it's purposeful. There's a reason for it, and therefore it becomes accessible because you understand why you're doing it. So I think for our young people, yes, when they have to come to understand what it is. You can't understand what happens in the SAM project fully without having seen it, because we aren't like anywhere else. Every pathway is like a job. They are all working collaboratively, especially now we have the retail shop, creating things that could be sold in the shop. So there is a purpose to every single thing that they do. And we have the woodwork team creating beautiful boxes, and then the art department then take those boxes and make them even more beautiful. There is always a purpose to what we do, and I think that's a huge motivator in education. So for young people who really struggle with anxiety, we've had some young people who've been out of education for years, some who really struggle just literally leaving their bedroom. I use that as an example, but we have had multiple trainees who just getting out of the house has been a massive challenge. And for those young people, sometimes their objectives with us, their journey begins with just getting them in across the threshold. And they develop so quickly. Once we've got them in, and it might take a whole term for them, and slowly their confidence builds and the space becomes familiar and comfortable, and they start challenging themselves, moving around, trying new things, speaking to new people. And then they come home, and we hear from families, they come home and they're buoyant and they're talking and they're coming and having dinner with the family at the table. These are what seems like small consequential things, but they are huge in that young person's development and their journey towards being independent. For those who really struggle to cross the threshold and whose attendance is really low, and we're at risk of losing them, because obviously if they are local authority funded, if they're not here, then why would the authority want to pay for their place? So with those trainees, we have some therapists that work with us, Youth Untroubled, and they are specialists in sort of 360 therapy, because we can work with the young person, but sometimes the parents also need support, because it's never easy. It's hard. It can be very isolating as a family, working with somebody who has complex needs against a system that you feel like you're constantly swimming against the tide, and to actually have somebody come in and support families as well, it can be quite a game changer. And the parent and care reforms, all of these things are available to support families. But I know as a parent, sometimes we create bad habits, because sometimes the route of least resistance is just what you need to do on a day just to get through it. And we create habits. And sometimes as those young people get older, the habits are embedded, but they're no longer helpful for that young person. And so our therapist team will work not only with the trainees, but with the families, and they work in the family home to help identify what are the changes that need to happen in that family dynamic to support that young person to improve their attendance. What is it that's stopping them from coming in? Is it really poor sleep habits? Every family is different, and every reason is different, but it's identifying that it's not just the young person here, it is a family as well. And if we can work with both sides, actually we can achieve really great results. So everyone's journey is different, and we will try and support every young person that comes through to us in whatever way that they individually need.
Of course, it's not surprising that the SAM project was created because of a gap in what is available to our children. This is a pretty familiar story, but it's also what gives many of us hope, because it means that there are people out there with the passion and, more importantly, the ideas to help ensure our children have the futures they all deserve. In next week's episode, I'm talking to Carol Noble, who leads the team at the East Coast Cafe, which is part of the SAM project, and she's talking about the impact that their hands-on learning approach has in building both employability skills and self-esteem. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope that the stories and solutions shared on here help you as you support your young person to create their future. If you know anyone who would find the ideas useful, please share the podcast with them. To support the podcast, please consider finding out more about the Independent Cooking Made Easy online course. It's a safe, simple system that works. There are links to the course in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn at Debra Caldow. I'd love to have a conversation with you on any of the topics we all care about. Bye for now.